I'm Tig Notaro. I'm the producer, one of the producers of Come See Me in the Good Light.
And I'm Ryan White, and I'm the director of Come See Me in the Good Light.
Well, talk to me first about sort of where this came from, and did you know of them? Where did someone bring this to you? Tell me about where this came from.
Yeah, I shamefully had never heard of Andrea Gibson.
Okay.
I had heard of Tig Notaro. We go way back with Tig. My producing partner, Jessica Hargrave, and I go way back with her. And we've been saying to Tig for years, like, why aren't documentaries funnier? At some point, bring us a funny documentary. Tig had a whole podcast about documentaries, is a huge fan of them.
I mean, it was barely about documentaries. It was more like, who do you think's hot in this documentary? But anyway.
It was great. And it was great for documentary filmmakers. But anyway, Tig called us a couple years ago with this idea. And we said, like, truly, what could be a less funny combination of words than poetry and cancer? And Tig said, listen, just hear me out. I've been lifelong friends with Andrea. They're one of the funniest people I know. Look them up and then get back to me. And we did, and we fell in love with Andrea right away. Tig had said, like, the way you described it to us was Andrea's the rock star of spoken word poetry, and it's not a world I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
And so once we watched some videos of Andrea performing, it blew my mind because not that there's anything wrong with being just poetry, but I think it's a combination of so many art forms, whether it's stand-up or storytelling and poetry and music. And it was like a type of performance I had never seen before. And so we were very intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
So, when did you start thinking, that Andrea would be a great subject for a documentary?
Well, Andrea and I have a mutual, really great friend who is also a producer on the film, Steph Willen. And Steph and I were on a phone call, and Steph brought up the idea to me, saying, I feel like this would make a really great documentary. And man, I was like, I couldn't get started fast enough. I was
Really?
like, I saw it so clearly. And I was saying last night at the screening that I was like, this is going to Sundance. This movie is going to be incredible. And I'm not joking. Like, I was truly, yes. And so Jess and Ryan were the filmmakers that I reached out to, along with, there were like 4 others that I did, and I got some responses.
But Ryan was your number one choice, obviously.
I mean, I truly watched everything they put out, and I would reach out and be like, oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. I love that. And, but 3 days later, they responded saying, are you sure Andrea would want to do a film at this point in their life? And I said, I know for sure. And they were on a plane days later to start filming this movie.
So tell me, how close is the movie that you both made to that initial vision in your head?
I mean, I didn't have an exact vision
Okay.
personally, other than I know in every fiber of my being that Andrea and Meg are so interesting, funny, intelligent, inspiring, all of the amazing things, and just captivating people. And I knew that whatever order, whatever storytelling was going to be happening, I knew they were going to be perfect subjects. I really trusted that, and I trust Ryan and Jess with every part of it.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, you've sort of chronicled larger than life personalities, and I mean, what was the challenge with this documentary specifically?
Well, I think the log line is still one of our
Yeah.
challenges. It's got a high barrier to get people to go see it because it sounds, no matter how we describe it, it sounds so sad and heartbreaking, and it is. And there are parts of our film that are sad and are heartbreaking because life is, but it is such a joyful film. It is such a funny film. Like, watching it with an audience last night was crazy. I felt like I was watching like
It was like a Will
screwball-
Ferrell movie.
Yes.
Yeah, like the level of laughter that was happening in that theater. Yeah.
Well, I knew we showed Tig an early cut, and I was sitting across on a couch from you, and I'd never like showed a comedian footage from one of my documentaries, and I remember watching you during one of our best scenes is this very sad scene about cancer, but it also takes this left turn to explicit lesbian sex, let's say. And watching Tig watch that scene, and Tig was laughing so hard, and I was like, All right, we've got
You
something
really-
good
I
here.
got it.
Like we've
I mean,
made our
it's-
producer happy.
It's really one of my favorite scenes I've ever seen in anything. It is so, like, to go from the level of humor in that scene to the level of pain, sad stuff.
Yeah.
It's and so naturally the way the scene moves so naturally through all of that is
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, it's kind of a gutsy move because you and I were pre-gaming just a minute ago about the kind of state of documentaries and what's getting picked up and what's not. So this is brave in a way. I mean, how are you feeling about that aspect of it?
No, it's a great question, but I find that really invigorating. I find it refreshing. It's like getting, I love watching the documentary boom over the last 10 years, but then it also becomes very fringe, like obviously celeb docs, true crime docs, music docs are very popular, get bought up quickly. And so it's difficult as someone who loves just verite, observational filmmaking, to get to do that always in your career. And so for me to get to make a film like this kind of felt like returning to my roots. I kind of felt like I was in film school again or in my 20s, where it's like, most people haven't heard of Andrea Gibson. No one's going to finance this film right away. It was fully financed by people that Tig and Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach were the first money in. They went to their network of people. It's only funded by individuals. I knew we couldn't go to a big streamer or distributor, and they weren't going to throw money at a poetry cancer film.
Right.
And I knew that we were going to have to prove ourselves in a theater like Sundance for that to be entertained. And so it allowed us complete autonomy and freedom to make an old school type of film. And it is truly verite. It's all observational. And it's truly an independent film. Like I've had 4 films at Sundance now. This is the first one that's come to Sundance that's unsold. So I'm kind of going in the reverse direction
Wow.
of what the trend is, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Like it was exciting to have a room full of buyers last night being moved by something that I think has that high barrier of entry that might sound like, ooh, do I want to go see that? And then seeing the emotion in their faces afterwards was just thrilling.
Do you want to talk about that, Tig? How did you wrestle up the funding for this?
Well, I mean, the first call I made was to Glennon and Abby. They had recently, at that moment in time, had Andrea and Meg on their podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, and had become kind of fast friends with Andrea and Meg. And I just thought, I bet this might speak to them. And so I sent them a text saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this project with Andrea and Meg. And they sent me I said, whenever you have time. And 2 minutes later, they sent me a Zoom link. And we had a great conversation. And they said, we need to talk about this and we'll get back to you, but we're definitely interested. And I thought, well, that seems good.
Right.
And I am not exaggerating when I say 30 seconds later, I got a text saying we're in for $500,000. And I was like, okay, this is exactly what I envisioned, like green lights all the way. And it was.
Really?
It was, I'm telling you.
Tig ran into Kevin Nealon on the street. Kevin Nealon from Weekend Update.
Yes.
He's our most surprising EP, an honorary lesbian, we call him.
Yeah.
But she ran into him on the street, and within days, he and his wife had invested in the film. It was just like that. Sarah Bareilles wrote a song for the film. She's an executive producer. She wrote it with Brandy Carlisle.
Yes.
Brandy Carlisle and her wife Kath Carlisle are executive producers. So it was just like this
It's just
family that
yeah.
formed.
And we have just been so in love with this project and each other. I mean, to the point where we're dressing alike, color coordinated. It's really been the easiest and most positive, love-filled experience. I mean that with everything in me.
I love that. Well, was the production fairly quick too? Was it sort of like we can't really second guess anything? We've got to just go.
Yeah, I mean, even when we showed up, we made it in a year, which is very fast for a documentary.
Okay.
We literally met Andrea like this week last year. And so when we met Andrea, and it's at the beginning of the film, they get a bad cancer marker result. So they interpret that as I'm going to die any day now. And so we believed that, and we thought that might be the case. But so we were thinking like, wow, this person is so compelling. What a brilliant artist. What an amazing juncture in their life to be filming. Like at the very least, maybe we'll make a short film or something. At the very least, which is a key phrase
In the movie.
from the film. I say it all the time now, by the way. But as I now know, as someone who hasn't been that close to someone with stage 4 cancer, it's like this. And so there were some miracle moments where Andrea's cancer markers went down, and we started thinking like, wow, we could be filming this a lot longer than we realized. And everything with Andrea and Meg, their partner, she ended up being the biggest surprise. I was like, 2 poets? Like
And
the poet is dating a poet? This
and
isn't
a
even
great
really saw
poet.
that. Yeah.
And Meg's storyline in this movie is just so beautiful, and the way it intertwines with Andrea's themes. It's like, I love it so deeply.
Yeah,
And I
she's
know
the sort
that-
of the secret weapon
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But we never thought, the assumption from the beginning, and this was Andrea's assumption too, was that they would die before this film came out, and that the film would document their death. And spoiler alert for people that haven't seen it, but Andrea is still alive, and the film ends with them still alive, and they were with us last night at the premiere, and it was something that at least I never imagined. I don't know if you did.
I think we all assumed that. I mean, you know, as you've said, when you met Andrea, they said, I'm going to be with you when I die. And was comforted by that, because the crew was so close with Andrea and Meg. I mean, they're so tight. And so, yeah, when the decision was made to wrap early and submit this and hope to get in, and hope that Andrea and Meg would be able to be at this screening, at this premiere, it all, again, green lights.
I mean, that's pretty amazing to shoot and edit a documentary of this complexity in a year.
Well, our editor, Bernice Chavez, we started her in January. So we
Okay,
came
so
back
she-
from the first shoot. She was editing nonstop.
Okay.
But the problem became that everything with Andrea and Meg was good. Like, I can't tell you how many scenes we didn't even entertain editing. I'm like, there is great stuff in there, but we don't even have time to touch it. And that's when we knew we could finish a film in a year. I was like, if we shot another year, we would have way too much material.
I
Like,
remember
we're
you
overshooting.
saying the first visit, you were like, we pretty much could make a documentary out of this run.
We could have made a
Yeah.
great short doc out of one shoot. That's very rare in documentary filmmaking. Like, our best scene, that one I'm talking about that went to explicit gay sex, happened the night we met them. That never happens as a documentary director. Like, usually the first month is so awkward in gaining that type of intimacy with someone. And Andrea and Meg were just ready.
Yeah, I mean, Andrea is so upfront and shares it all.
I mean, this movie's got everything: cancer, poets, explicit lesbian sex. I mean, put it on the poster.
That's why I
Let's-
got into the biz.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know, obviously it sounds like there were many surprises. I mean, just finding out about them, you know, as a person, but like, what was the biggest surprise that you came away with from this project with?
I mean, my biggest surprise is how funny this film is. It's definitely the funniest film I made. I mean, I was joking earlier when I said Tig brought us like the least funny combination of words. It is, I think they are hilarious people, and I hope we captured that. I feel like we did based on the laughter last night, and I don't think, you know, there's a whole genre of terminal illness films, especially in scripted film, and they're not very funny.
No.
And this one is heartbreaking at times, and that's what's the brilliance of Andrea. Like, I watched it throughout the entire shoot. Even someone who'd have one day with Andrea, like a sound person or something, would come up to us later and say like, oh my God, this was so important to me, or what they said in this moment changed my life. And so there was something about the gamut of emotion that comes with a terminal illness that, and Andrea hates the word terminal because of that.
Yeah.
They use the word incurable, that it's not all doom and gloom, that you continue living your life, and that, you know, I think for me, this was the most joyful film I ever made. It was the most fun I've ever had making a film, and that's very ironic, I would think.
Yeah.
Considering it's someone that I fell in love with, will possibly die while I'm making it. But, you know, I don't know. I had the time of my life making it. I had the time of my life last night. And that's a huge surprise. I
Yeah.
didn't expect that on day one.
Yeah. What about you, Tig?
As far as surprises?
Yeah. Anything you learned along the way? Anything that shocked you?
Well, I think what I learned, which is nice to learn, I've been in entertainment for almost 30 years, and there always seems to be some horrible, some part of something going awry, or a person where you're like, whoa, curveball. Jeez. It has given me hope that you can put everything into something and have an exceptional time start to finish. And there was nothing really surprising to me about the film, really, because of Andrea and Meg and because of Jess and Ryan. I'm like, yeah, this adds up. But it's more so you don't know how people are going to react when, you're telling their story, or somebody's the director, and, or somebody put in the most money, or there's so many things that can make everything go wrong.
Yeah.
And everything went right. That was a surprise.
I mean, it's coming out in a pretty fraught political climate too.
What do you mean?
I'll tell you later too.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's more importance on the film? Are you worried that maybe it won't get picked up or have the same commercial viability because of where we are in the world? Like,
Feels like the timing is prime.
Yeah.
Because it is really a lesson in compassion and an example of compassion. I don't know how anybody breathing in and out could watch this and not be moved in some way or another, and your heart not grow.
Yeah, and there's no politics in the film.
Yeah.
And I obviously we weren't expecting to be in this position politically when our film came out, and that was not any part of our calculation of making the film, nor was it part of Andrea and Meg's. But when you tell these types of just human stories, like my dad and his girlfriend saw this film last night. They're Southerners. They don't understand, like, they have a gay son, but they don't understand transness. They don't understand non-binary. My dad was butchering the pronouns last night, but my dad fell in love with Andrea and Meg. He could not wait to meet them at the after party. And I think this is someone who probably doesn't understand, is a lifelong Republican, doesn't necessarily understand the harm that's caused when we declare as a government that there are two genders. And then you watch a story like this of just a genderqueer couple. We don't make a point out of it. Andrea doesn't make a point out of it. They talk about it throughout the film, but it's not the point of the film. And I think hopefully anybody that watches this film will fall in love with this couple. And I've made films like this in the past. It's the best way to change hearts and minds, is just invite an audience to watch a human go on a journey and then say, like, do you really not want this person or this couple to be happy?
Right.
Do you really want to deprive them
And
of
safe.
Yeah.
And thrive. I mean, it's like they're such gifts to this planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I think it's the perfect time
Yeah.
for a story like this, and none of us wanted that.
Yeah.
That's not why we were making this film at this time.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end. Thank you guys both so much.
Thank you.
And, yeah. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, Drew.
Of course.